Another season is upon us. Freshmen arrive wide-eyed with dreams of future glory, while seniors prepare for their last chance at immortality. There are only a handful of these opportunities in a man's life, a handful of chances to distinguish yourself from the rest. It's on these fields where history is made, where legends begin and heroes triumph. Traditions tell the story of what you represent, of those that forge the legacy you uphold. When you come charging out of the tunnel, 100,000 people will be watching your every move. How you respond to that pressure is what defines you. These are the moments that reveal your toughness, your determination, and your pride. The Roughnecks on the Sooner Schooner. Ralphie charging out of the gate. And Chief Osceola planting his spear. The time has come. Your time is now.
You know, there are truly only a handful of times in a man's life where he is truly speechless. And to be honest with you here tonight, I am completely speechless. We all know why we're here, because we were planning on having this show anyways. But why we're having this discussion, because we also saw the college football version of the Loge Bomb being dropped earlier today. Brandon Sorsby eligible to play after he serves a 2-game suspension. He's going to be available for the Red Raiders for the 2026 college football season. And so with that being said, I mean, we're going to have to dive right into it. You already know what we're going to talk about. But before we get into the bigger ramifications for our sport, I do want to touch up on things from a football perspective, because if you're a Red Raiders guy, specifically from a football perspective, you are absolutely elated by this news the same way that Ole Miss was probably elated when they found out that Trinidad Chambliss was going to be found eligible to play this upcoming season.
Good evening, Jake.
Good evening, Reed.
How are you?
I am feeling a lot of things.
You know, it's one thing to get your tonsils removed and, cite over 70 pages worth of medical information to say you're basically on too many drugs to be able to play football. That's one thing. To place over thousands of bets on your own team that you are a part of at a previous university that you were at. Shout out to Throne Spud. The fact that we are talking about a player that has literally bet on himself and is still eligible to play this game. Nothing surprises me anymore. The NCAA is a sham. It's just a logo. It's just a 4-letter acronym, and it essentially means nothing anymore. It's dead. It's dead.
Yeah, especially if the NCAA chooses to not pursue this any further and just, as Throne Spud also Mike mentioned in the chat, just let it ride. Let's ride this thing out. I would imagine that the NCAA is not gonna just sit by and allow this to happen. They're gonna appeal this to a higher level, because like you mentioned, Reed, like it's one thing where like you mentioned like the tonsils, and it was questionable. But I mean, in a pure, you could see the logic behind how that could be considered, maybe a lost year of eligibility under that circumstance. I genuinely do not see the logic here, and it's a rough day when you're sitting back. And Blake Crane over on Crane & Co. said it perfectly earlier today, when essentially everyone is in agreement that this is a terrible thing. That's when you done messed up, right? Because we're looking at it from like the playoff, for example. There was a lot of intense divisions about the playoffs when we were talking about that. There's been some intense divisions on, like some other things that are happening in our sport, like going, like trying to reform the transfer portal or any of the other things that are happening in our sport right now. All the things that are happening in like there was clearly two camps, and there was a sizable numbers in both camps, right? The fact that everyone is in the same camp, like you, when Ohio State and Michigan fans agree with each other, that's when like we got to be up in arms. Like, do you know how bad you have to mess up for Ohio State fans and Michigan fans to agree on anything?
That makes it more ironic because I literally put out my top 10 rivalries today, let alone we're talking about something that literally 98% of the college football population agrees on, that this is just completely asinine. It's wrong. And again, it sets a precedent that you could literally bet on yourself. I mean, it's that saying you hear when your parents tell you when you're growing up, like bet on yourself, always, back yourself first and foremost. This is literally the definition of that. He bet on himself and he is still eligible to play. And the funniest thing that I got out of the article, specifically from Pete Nakos, is that the judge in question, and I quote this court finds the applicant has demonstrated that he will suffer probable, imminent, and irreparable injury if this court does not issue this temporary injunction because he is unable to participate as a member of Texas Tech's football team. Probable, imminent, and irreparable. The only thing that is having a reparable injury is his wallet, is his bank account. That's the only thing that is suffering injury through all of this. Let alone he probably has, I don't know, however much money in his DraftKings account that he probably should have withdrew before this all took place. It's stupid language. Injury? How is he what injury is coming from this other than the fans getting injured by this asinine decision?
Yeah, and it's not like Texas Tech was going to like suffer greatly. I mean, like Will Hammond was going to be perfectly fine for that quarterback, and like they have a couple of really promising players behind Will Hammond that could turn into superstars. Even like Kirk Francis, has played a little bit like over in Tulsa, so they were like it's obviously not the same level as a Brandon Sorsby, the football player, but they were going to be okay at the quarterback position. They did not need him for this regular season anyways. They were like, I would be surprised if they would lose more than a couple of games this season anyways, but it really could turn into a messy situation quickly. I mean, I saw reported from College Football Kings via Ross Dellinger, but there are Big 12 schools that are considering boycotting their matchup against Texas Tech. So this can unravel extremely quickly if there isn't a resolution that frankly makes the most sense here, right? And I'll be the first to back Texas Tech fans, and I backed Texas Tech fans on here last week when they were having their saga against Texas and talking about how Texas was basically making fun of Texas Tech's strength of schedule. And I thought that was a smart move by Joey McGuire and company, calling that out and be like, hey, maybe you should play us then. So I call a spade. It's no hate against Texas Tech. There's no love for Texas Tech. I just try to call a spade at the end of the day. And I would feel the exact same way too, for the record, if it was Arch Manning involved and a ruling was made in the benefit of Texas football getting Arch Manning for this season. So this is not taking it out on Texas Tech by any means. This is terrible. This is genuinely terrible. And it's one of those things where there will always be diehards that will watch this sport, but it's one of those things where maybe for someone that doesn't truly care about college football that much, this is going to lose some people.
Yeah, and let me reiterate that point you made. This is nothing against Texas Tech, the school, Joey McGuire, the school itself in the program we have no problem with. It's just the NCAA's decision with this whole situation. And a lot of people on Twitter today were bringing up the fact that okay, if we're making this decision, what's to say we don't bring back NFL players that haven't made it in the league that are still young enough. We could bring on a 26-year-old player who's been in the NFL for 3-4 years, hasn't really had steady, placement on a roster. We could bring him back. What's to say that's not the next move? I wouldn't put it past him. nothing is going to surprise me anymore about decisions that come from the NCAA and their line of thinking when it comes to this stuff. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not. I can't even blame it on the NCAA, because the NCAA originally did make the correct decision in terms of making sure that this kid did not play on a football field ever again, at least at the college level. He was going to be permanently banned from playing in college athletics because of his gambling that took place over the last couple of years. But like the fact that the NCAA has constantly been declawed time and time again, because the NCAA was slow to adapt, some of the stuff that we see from NIL, as well as in other measures, such as allowing people to transfer without losing a year. That it's coming to bite them in the butt yet again. And so it really just comes down to if the NCAA loses this, then there is no point for the NCAA to exist. And then you really open up this can of worms. And we've already seen this happen for basketball, where we've seen guys that are kind of on two-way contracts in the NBA briefly come back and play on college basketball teams. We saw a couple of instances of it last basketball season. So it really turns into a slippery slope, because we've already seen it for baseball. So while there is an immense difference between, like an 18-year-old and a 26-year-old when it comes to playing football, because it's a much more physical sport, you open up the door for that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that there is a quick appeal and a quick resolution so that things can get turned around. But yeah, this is one of those things where I'm obviously still going to care about this sport, but at the same time, I understand some people being turned away from the sport right now, and no, for me, it leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, to be honest with you.
I agree. It's definitely showing that greed and how much money is in the bank account, has a say on the sport right now. In really everything, the playoff, conference realignment, TV deals. I mean, shoot, we're about to get Congress involved in basically everything at this point. So, I mean, really, whoever has the most money at this point basically controls the sport. And again, it's a really toxic thing. It's a really toxic direction that we're going down. And I think just, again, the fact that we're setting the precedent that you can literally gamble on yourself and your team, it's this basically slap in the wrist. Let alone, there have been multiple examples of this in the past where we've seen people not even gamble on their own sport. There was, I forget his name, but the player at Iowa a few years ago that bet on the women's team in the NCAA basketball tournament, placed like $3 $5 bets, I think he said, and then got banned.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually shared a tweet from Sleeper College Football. It was Hunter Deckers. He was a backup quarterback. He was playing at Iowa State. Yeah, he got a lifetime ban from all NCAA athletics for not even betting on his own sport. And I mean, again, I understand where they were coming from, and I think that's a fair and valid decision because of the fact that we're caring about the integrity of the game here. That's really what it barrels down to. And I think it also sets a dangerous precedent just in terms of, well, what if we were watching a game and we see a missed field goal, or we see just a generally boneheaded play? You know what we're going to think first and foremost? We're going to think, oh, this game is rigged.
I mean, hey, the NFL scripting is already a real thing. Lots of people believe that the NFL is fully scripted. So it's going to become that point.
Yeah, and I've met a couple of people that actually genuinely believe that the NFL is completely scripted. It's the type of folks that you can't reach through, and there's nothing that you could show. So it's a tough day. And like I mentioned, if you are turned away from the sport right now, I completely understand. I still think that it's the best sport in the world, but there's clearly some evil parties that run this sport right now that just are not in a good place. And I know you got something on screen here. So
I will say I thought this was funny. Texas Tech's newest jersey sponsor, I will say, looks pretty nice.
Oh yeah, that right there. Listen, beautiful job. Beautiful jerseys right there. We are allowed to have uniform patches.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, shoot, people were poking fun at them because they got their new stadium rights, and it's like Jones Poly Market AT&T Stadium or something. Like someone was poking fun at them, but yeah, I mean, this is the point it's going to come to. I would not be shocked if we get to a point where, I mean, this is completely aside from the Sorsby dilemma. I feel like we're going to go down a road that sports books and, all these big organizations that are involved in sports betting are just going to completely ignore college athletics now. I feel like they're going to fully go pro and just completely ignore college athletics. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, I know on my specific programming, I touch on some gambling stuff, but I don't like actively promote it. Like I said, you have to bet this. Like this is a like for sure bet or something like that. Like I just put it out there just to give context to like a team's projections going into the season. Like I just put out my Oregon preview. I literally put up their odds for the national championship because they are a national championship favorite, and I have to give that context.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I put it on there. I don't strictly say that you have to, go bet this, like, because that's not the precedent I'm trying to set. So, I mean, there's stuff like that. Like, I'm thinking of not even including it now, just solely because of this dilemma.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. And I mean, we're already seeing it in certain states, like in my home state in Ohio, for example. Last year, they banned the like the betting on props, like player props for college players. So I can definitely imagine that we see more something like that on a national level, because we're starting to see things from certain players. From that integrity standpoint, like seeing that go away. If these bigger sports books end up just focusing on professional football and not having an option for college football, that's understandable as well. But like, dude, it's just one of those things where we can talk about it all night long, to be honest with you. But you know what? We have a great show tonight. We have some actual ball that we're gonna talk about. This is not gonna. I promise this is not gonna turn into like an hour and a half long rant on Brandon Sorsby. So hey, we're gonna have a great show here tonight. So if you're ready to enjoy this show, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and then last but not least, shout out to our friends over at Buzzer, allowing us the opportunity to have some fun over on their platform, stream it over there. It's been really nice, really good partnership forming in real time. So very excited for that. So Reed, you ready to go ahead and talk about some actual football, dude?
I like to stay positive. I like to talk about things that actually are fun, engaging, and although this might not be fun for some people because we might be bashing on some teams tonight, but it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal.
Yeah, we definitely want to preface this. This is nothing personal. This is strictly business. This is the same like context that I gave when I put out my my personal ceilings of all 138 teams earlier today over on Twitter. There was certainly some programs that were a little hurt today, but that's okay, because sometimes the truth hurts. And today is all about the inverse of that, because last time that we were on here, we were talking about like the bigger sleepers, teams that were not necessarily getting a lot of attention, but they can mess around and really be in that conference title mix or be in that college football playoff mix. This is kind of the inverse event that we're going to talk about tonight. These are teams that maybe holistically there's a lot more expectations to be in that conference title or playoff mix, but if the nightmare scenario happens, they can absolutely fall on their face and fall well short of expectations. Kind of think of what happened to Clemson last year over in the ACC. And Reed, you're going to want to cover your ears for this one. What also happened to Penn State, like in the Big Ten, when a lot of people were talking about Penn State possibly winning the national championship, and then they ended up winning, their postseason game. But it was not a like a New Year's Six bowl. It was a Pinstripe Bowl instead, right? So
you don't want to mention what else happened, or too sore of a subject.
Well, and I guess like the coach got fired. I guess that was a big deal at the time too. Like a little bit of a shock.
Just a little detail.
Just a little footnote. I mean, got to see Grunt Mars start. That's cool.
Kobe Howard, free Kobe Howard.
Yeah, but yeah. So this is what tonight is all about. Like just going through those potential underachievers. And this time I was doing things a little bit different here, because I'm actually going to have the audacity to put the conferences in alphabetical order. I did not do that last time. So now we're actually going to do that. We're going to work from the left to like the right-hand side. So with that being said, going to start things out with the ACC here in terms of teams that could potentially underachieved this year in comparison to maybe what their preseason expectations currently are right now. So for me, to get things started here for the ACC, I actually want the Louisville Cardinals. So there are some sneaky tough games here on the schedule. First and foremost, SMU at home, NC State on the road, and we know that CJ Bailey, might probably is going to be an underdog in that Louisville game, but you know what they say, an underdog is still a dog. Georgia Tech on the road as well here. Pitt, with Mason Heischel, who I think is definitely a little bit more experienced in terms of actual playing time than Lincoln Kienholz. Kentucky is an improved team here as well. And so I'm looking at Lincoln Kienholz. Lincoln's been around for a while. He's been sitting at Ohio State for a few years. But the only meaningful game action that we've seen from Louisville, or from Lincoln Kienholz, was at Cotton Bowl. That Cotton Bowl was not a fun experience for Lincoln Kienholz. So it really just comes down to, and I think Jeff Brom is a brilliant offensive mind. What if Lincoln Kienholz is a bum? What if he's a bust? There's no one really behind Lincoln Kienholz that can take over and suddenly right the ship if things go wrong at the quarterback position. I think they could win a game or two with the running game. I think they can win a game or two with their defense. But can they consistently win without that passing game? That's becomes a much more difficult conversation. So I went with Louisville here. But I'm curious how you're feeling in terms of maybe teams that could be in a not so great spot.
I'm going to go in a different direction. Potentially another team that is a favorite to play Miami in said conference championship game. A team I'm personally high on, but definitely, could bottom out. The SMU Mustangs are going to be my pick. And this is an interesting pick for me just because, they have been to the college football playoff in the last 3 years. Rhett Lashley has gotten them to a conference championship game in the first 3 years in the conference. And I solely am picking SMU because, this is solely like Kevin Jennings just stinks. And the surrounding pieces around him aren't really going to pan out. They had a couple of portal additions, Yannick Smith at receiver, Kendrick Raphael in the backfield. What if they don't pan out? A Jeremy Wyrick on the defense, Marquez White, Ira Singleton, transfers from South Florida. What if they don't pan out? Let alone you also are bringing in 2 new coordinators. They lose both coordinators. The offensive coordinator, he took the Missouri State job. His name is escaping me right now.
Casey Woods, your favorite Casey Woods, who took that Missouri State job to replace Ryan Beard. Shout out to Ryan Beard, by the way.
Shout out Ryan Beard. Also Casey Woods. I like that hire. His name was just escaping me, so my apologies. But yeah, he leaves. They also have a new defensive coordinator, Maurice Crum Jr. They only returned 9 starters holistically. A lot of it is on the defense. 3 of the starters returning are on the offensive line, so that's good for them. They only returned 61%, of their offensive production. It's really just nothing hits schedule-wise at Louisville, at Notre Dame, at Stanford the last 2 games of the season. So they do have to make a West Coast trip. On the road at Florida State. Might not be easy, but I'm a little lower on Florida State. So, really that back end, Notre Dame, Stanford. Stanford I'm not super high on, but they do have to travel out west. So I think they're tougher games they do get on the road, Florida State, Louisville, Notre Dame. So SMU, I think, definitely has a ceiling of a conference championship, but they also have that potential to, be a 500 around a bowl team. So SMU.
Yeah, and I'll say this as well about SMU too. You touch on the Louisville game on the road, but then they also opened the season up against Florida State on the road. Doak Campbell is not a super easy place to play in either. So, it's not necessarily a layup of a game that they're going to start off with to begin the season. There is a real possibility that they could lose both the Florida State game as well as that Louisville game as well and be essentially on life support in terms of the ACC championship race before we even get out of the month of September. So there is some, couple of potholes that they're going to have to navigate early. I think this is a safe bowl team. I don't see them missing a bowl game. But they definitely could get themselves out of the ACC and therefore college football playoff conversation very quickly if they don't handle business. And that was kind of what happened to SMU last year. They got off to a little bit of a slow start. Can they avoid that 2 years in a row?
Got out to a slow start, and let alone they were in the ACC championship race, as were half the conference the last week of the season, and fell short to Cal that last game. So can you avoid the 2 potholes at the start of the season on the road, Florida State and Louisville? And I mean, let alone they have their bye week in week 6, so they have to play 7 straight games on the back end of their schedule. So I think it's definitely possible for SMU, but I mean, again, if everything doesn't work out, and two new coordinators, things could be shaky out of the gate.
Yeah, for sure. And like also finishing the season up at Stanford. We know that we're not very high on Stanford, but it is a cross country road trip.
Yes.
So that's that could be another potential that because we saw them make a cross country road trip late in the season last year, and look what ended up happening in the ACC after that. But
yeah,
hey, we'll go ahead and keep it moving here. We got 9 more conferences to cover. So next up, we do have the American Conference, one of the more patriotic conferences in college football, as we come into getting a little bit closer to the 4th of July weekend. For the American, and speaking of that patriotism, I do have the Army Black Knights here. Like Army does have a lot of winnable games, but also they're not necessarily one of those teams where they can just simply roll their headgear out and assume that everything's going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like Temple on the road to begin the season, like that team's got some teeth. USF still has some teeth as well, even though maybe it's not the same caliber of team last year. Louisiana Tech's solid team. Tulane, man, like even with Will Hall, like Tulane is so good organizationally that it's still going to be a really hard time for Will Hall to mess that situation up. Like Tulane, I think, could still be okay. Tulsa is an improved football team. Memphis arguably got better at head coach. Like even though Ron Silver was a solid head coach, they got a better head coach in Charles Huff. Air Force is a sleeper in the Mountain West. East Carolina, one of the most physical teams in this conference. They played Army last year, and guess what? East Carolina bullied them at the line of scrimmage. They could very well do that again. And then, of course, the Navy game, Navy one of the better programs in recent memory. So, like, they could win all of their games, but there's also a world where they could lose a lot of these games too, and they could, fall back from what was an average season last year. Like, I have a floor of 3-9. Like that's how low of a floor about to have an Army. It's one of the wild cards of major college football when talking about the FBS holistically. We'll see what happens, but they can't take anyone for granted necessarily outside of a few games.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go in a different direction in the American, and it's a team I've seen a lot, when people are doing like American previews that they have in the upper half of the conference. And I think I have their floor around middle of the pack, the conference. I'm going East Carolina with my pick.
Okay.
And a lot of this has to do with their returning production. They do not grade out well in returning production. They return no starters on the offensive line, so that's a start. You only return 7 starters holistically, 3 off the offense, 4 off the defense. Quarterback is a question mark for me. They do have Emory Williams transferring in from Miami. Mitch Griffiths transferring in from Texas Tech by way of Wake Forest. 2 unproven quarterbacks to this point, don't really have a lot of film. Running backs look solid, probably the lone bright spot on the offense. Defensively, have some question marks. They bring in some nice looking transfers. Zaire Gamble, namely 72 tackles, 4 tackles for loss in his career. They also, similar to SMU, bring on 2 new coordinators this season. It's nothing against Blake Harrell. I like Blake Harrell as a coach, 14-5 in his first few years at ECU. So he's been very successful so far. But I think, again, similar to SMU, new coordinators, they could bottom out just solely because, it takes used to it gets used to having new coordinators around. So, and let alone the schedule, they open up at Alabama, on the road at Old Dominion. That could be a toss-up game. ODU is a very solid team. UAB on the road, Memphis on the road, at Army, as you said, They get South Florida on their schedule, FAU. Like they get some pretty solid teams in the American. So I think ECU, I have their floor at 7-5. So Alabama, ODU, Memphis, Army, USF, FAU. I mean, they definitely could be a middle of the pack team, in my opinion. I still think they're a bowl team, but I mean, 7-5, 6-6 is definitely the floor for me for ECU.
Yeah, and that's actually what I'm tracking to as well, about the 7-5 for myself for East Carolina. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some losable games. I mean, like Old Dominion, they may not have, Colton Joseph, who was one of the more electric quarterbacks in the G6, but man, Ricky Ron has really elevated that program over a few years. They were kind of like hanging around even kill like couple years prior to last season, but like man, they really had that breakout season. And so, like, you could see Ricky Ron start to elevate that program. So even without Colton Joseph, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, both their quarterback prospects on paper look pretty solid, and everyone is making pretty good assumptions that Emory Williams is a pretty solid transfer, as he was the backup at Miami last year. But again, limited film, limited, like we just haven't seen enough of the two quarterbacks, and that's a big question mark for me. So let alone you bring in two new coordinators and you don't have a lot of returning production to an offensive line that you're going to have to piece together from players that were in your program and through the portal. So again, just a lot of holes that I need to see filled for the East Carolina team. Pause.
Yeah, definitely pause there. But yeah, I mean, like, I think East Carolina will be a solid team, but there definitely is like, they're not fail proof, like, by any means. But let's go ahead and keep it rolling here to the Big Ten. I'm very curious with what your thoughts are in terms of who's that Big Ten team that you're eyeing, does have those initial expectations, but could very well fall flat on their face.
Penn State.
Okay.
Penn State. I mean, this is solely based on transition year. Matt Campbell. I mean, you're coming off James Franklin, who was there for 12 and a half years. Everyone, when you talk about Penn State, is going to mention the schedule, how easy it is on paper. It's very easy. USC, Michigan, at Washington, your three toughest games, at Northwestern potentially. Again, this is fully based on this is a transition year. It just takes time to get used to Matt Campbell. 4.5 for Penn State is like 7-5. I mean, realistically, you bake in USC, Michigan, Washington, 3 losses. At Northwestern, I mean, they lost to them last year. A lot of return production for Northwestern there. Yes, AT, I am being honest. Wisconsin, don't know what Wisconsin's going to be. They bring in, i.e. Colton Joseph, as we just talked about. Minnesota always is a tough team to play. I mean, Maryland we own, but who knows what Maryland is at the last game of the season. They could be on an interim head coach at that point in the season. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to be as realistic as possible here. You don't bring a lot of returning production back. You return 2 starters from last year. So this is completely an Iowa State roster, let alone some of the players that we bring back. I do like Danton Lynn at defensive coordinator. Does Taylor Mauser pan out as offensive coordinator? A lot of people think Rocco Becht is a hit or miss transfer. I personally like Rocco Becht, but again, this is solely based on transition period. It just doesn't hit in year one for Matt Campbell.
Yeah, and I'll also say this. I mean, Matt Campbell did bring in a lot of key pieces from that Iowa State football team, and we talked about and we kind of roasted like Colorado over the course of this off season. Like, Iowa State lost to that team, and I understand that there was a couple of notable exceptions of what happened there. Like, they had some injuries in the secondary, but still, it's not like Colorado was necessarily lighting the world on fire with their passing attack either, right? Like, it was a very difficult watching passing attack. It was a hard watch. It was a hard watch watching Colorado try to move the ball downfield with any kind of consistency last year. So like the top end, like, they have some good top end players, but to your point, Reed, this might not be a team that's as deep as maybe what we've seen in previous years. So
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some losable games, but like Northwestern is a pretty underrated team too, who they do have on their schedule. Maryland, Like Maryland has some solid pieces too. It depends on if Mike Walksley can figure out how to win beyond the month of September, but I mean they're solid pieces there. So yeah, I mean I can definitely understand where you're coming from. I went in a slightly different direction here, though. I did not go with Penn State. I am actually going with what Ohio State fans would refer to as the team up north. I did roll with the Michigan Wolverines. Brand new head coach and Kyle Whittingham. It makes you wonder, is Kyle Whittingham's system going to translate to Michigan? Is it going to be as good of a fit as we think it's going to be? Because on a surface level, we do think that it's a huge head coaching upgrade. Sharon Moore we think we're holding this program back over the course of the last couple of years. But we don't know how long Kyle Whittingham was. He a product of understanding Utah incredibly well and understanding, the Big 12. And, he was, when he started off coaching there, I believe Utah was in the Mountain West, if I'm not mistaken, that long ago. So you have that going on. Does that equate to quality Big Ten football, right? And then Bryce Underwood. What if Bryce Underwood doesn't take that step forward as anticipated? I mean, he showed flashes in his true freshman campaign, but I mean, it wasn't completely pretty through and through. So what if he doesn't take that step forward and it's just, not terrible, but what if he's just average, right? Like just an average Big Ten quarterback, because there's definitely some losable games in there. I mean, especially late in the season, Oregon on the road. That's a brutal road trip. Playing Ohio State on the road. I understand it's a rivalry game, but I mean, Ohio State, arguably the most talented team in college football. So those are two tough games that you got off rip. You have Oklahoma as well. Oklahoma is coming off of a playoff appearance. Iowa is a very physical football team. You're going to have to play them as well. And you feel the same way about Minnesota's squad. Like Penn State is rolled in there. Oh, and you happen to play the defending national champions led by Kirk Cignetti, arguably the best coach in college football right now. So this could turn south very quickly in the first half of the season. Like, it's not completely ridiculous. Like, if it's a true nightmare scenario, like Michigan could be 2-5. It could get that bad.
Yeah.
There are 5 losable games in the first 7 if they don't show up ready to play. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think they're going to be a little bit closer to their ceiling. But, man, if it's not a smooth transition for Kyle Whittingham and Bryce Underwood, he doesn't improve or even worse, takes a step back, it could be a Penn State situation like we saw last year, and it could get ugly very quickly.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on the Bryce Underwood front. I mean, every other day, I feel like I see someone on Twitter bashing, Bryce Underwood stinks, and he hasn't lived up to his potential yet because he was a super highly rated prospect, and Michigan paid all this money to be able to, lure him away from LSU. But I mean, totally agree with you on that point, because what if he doesn't take a step forward in a new system? I think this, quote me if I'm wrong, I think this is his 3rd offensive coordinator, because I know he came in late 2 years ago when they went to the bowl game. I think this might be his 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years.
Yes, because I think their first offensive coordinator left because he was tied to the Michigan.
He was tied. Yeah.
And then the second offensive coordinator left because Sharon Moore left. Yeah. So now Kyle Whittingham has his guy, which I think will do a good job of utilizing his legs a little bit more. I think he is an athletic quarterback for sure. But again, it's possible that it might not be as perfect of a fit as anticipated either.
Yeah, and I also still have some questions about their receiver room. I mean, I know they bring in J.J. Buchanan from Utah, follows Jason Beck. They still have Andrew Marsh there, who's a really highly rated receiver in the Big Ten. But aside from those two, I kind of have some question marks on the depth at receiver. But that's just me personally when looking at the roster holistically.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with both Michigan and Penn State this year. And ATL said in chat perfectly, 8-4 would not be surprising at all, which is right around where they were last year. Give or take a game or two. So, well, I mean, we'll have to wait and see there. But moving on to the Big 12 here, though, got the Big 12 on deck. I'm eyeing TCU here as a team that could be a disappointing team. You know, you're breaking in a brand new quarterback in Jaden Craig, and he did some good work in the Ivy League. But there is some levels to this, though, right? You know, like the Ivy League is not on not remotely the same level of football as the Big 12. I mean, like we can agree on that. So what if Jaden Craig profited off of playing against lower level competition, and then he goes up against a higher level of competition? Because there's some really good teams here in the Big 12 and some really good quarterbacks as well. Connor Legman, Devin Dampier. You know, there's some really talented guys. Bear Botmeyer, really talented guys. Yeah. And so what if he gets exposed a little bit? I mean, there's some losable games in here when they get into conference play. Like UCF looks like to be a better football team. They got to play Bear Bachmeier in that BYU Cougar squad. Baylor has DJ Wagway, who still has some untapped potential here. He was a highly touted player a couple of years ago. Then you also have Noah Fafita that you go up against, and that's a road trip for you. Avery Johnson still has some untapped potential, and he might have the perfect offensive coordinator in Colin Klein. You know, again, like you play Utah, and then who knows what's happened with that Texas Tech situation, if it's going to be Brandon Sorsby. Like, even if it's Will Hammond, I mean, Will Hammond showed that he can play in the limited playing time. Like, he's not a scrub at all. So, like TCU, like, they're not careful. I mean, that's a team that could potentially miss a bowl game as well. You know, even like West Virginia, like one of their lesser games, like West Virginia is looking to be a better football team than last year too.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. This is totally Jaden Craig not, you know, stepping up to the plate, basically. You said he's coming from Harvard. He's coming from the Ivy League. The Ivy League is not on the level of the Big 12, respectfully to the Ivy League. So this is totally Jaden Craig not taking a step up and, you know, playing to the level that he's capable of for that TCU offense. I'm going to go in a different direction, and it's one of the teams I actually mentioned on TCU's schedule. I'm going to go with the Utah Utes.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going with the Utah Utes as my pick. And let me preface this because, as we know, we just talked about Michigan, Kyle Whittingham departing the Utah program, and everyone thought he was retiring. Then it comes out that Utah was actually trying to push him out the door because then he takes the Michigan job, and everyone's like, well, I thought he was retiring. And, you know, it kind of got, you know, iffy there. It kind of got some speculation. Like, was Utah actually just wanting to move on from him, but they didn't want to, you know, embarrass him? Anyway, Kyle Whittingham is not there anymore. He was there for over 20 years. Now at the helm is Morgan Scalley, who's been in the program for a few years now, but, you know, you elevate him from within. 2 new coordinators to go along with him. I believe they're both promoted from within as well. Might be wrong on that front. I do not know off the top of my head, but Morgan Scalley, this is his first head coaching job. I mean, I know he coached the bowl game last year. Colton kicked Nebraska's butt. So, this is kind of like a Ole Miss situation. Pete Golding takes over for the playoffs, lights the world on fire, gets him to a semifinal. Was that the same thing with Morgan Scalley? I kind of the same thought process. They lose a lot of their top end talent from last season to Michigan to follow Kyle Whittingham. They still have Devon Dampier, really good quarterback. They still have Rashawn Parker in the backfield, really good running back. They have a few transfer receivers that I'm really high on. Defense, they're kind of plugging and playing with the transfer portal because, again, top end talent. They really lost a lot defensively to the portal to follow Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. The schedule at Colorado could be tough. At Iowa State, Cincinnati, Arizona, and TCU are your road games. Arizona and TCU back to back in November could be tough. 2 pretty highly rated teams. Actually, their last 4 games: BYU, at Arizona, at TCU, and home to West Virginia, the last game of the season. So, let alone you also get Houston at home. So, I mean, you avoid Texas Tech, but you still have some of the heavy hitters there in the Big 12. So, I mean, the floor I have for this Utah team is 7-5 potentially. So, I definitely think this is just another transition from a longtime head coach to another. Morgan Scalley taking over for Utah.
Yeah, and I mean that Houston team shouldn't really be slept on because Connor Wegman quietly one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. I mean, he doesn't have the sexiest name, and he doesn't have like the flashiest plays, and a lot of talk on the quarterback position is around Keyshawn Henderson, was a 5-star quarterback that they just brought in. It's going to be the future of the program, and but I mean, like Connor Wegman can play. Like he might be like the second or third best quarterback in this conference. That's regardless of whether Sorsby plays or not. Like he is that good.
Yeah. Also, don't forget this man started at Texas A&M, and they pushed him out. So
yeah, they were eager to get him pushed out of the door, but he definitely found a home there. I mean, like even the Cincinnati road game. I mean, Cincinnati, like Utah is going to have to go across the country to play that Cincinnati team. That could be a feisty team depending on how their season is going under Scott Satterfield too. So yeah, that's going to be something to keep an eye on moving forward. Is how does it look under Morgan Scalley? One thing I will say that works in his favor, that he's been here for a really long time. So he is familiar with the program at the very least. It's just, how different is it going to look from a head coaching perspective? That's going to be what I'm very curious to see moving forward.
Yeah, and that's the main reason I'm picking Utah is just, I mean, he's been in that system for a while. He's been in that program, but how is he as the head man, having head coach duties, leading the entire program versus like just one side of the ball or position group. So definitely a big question mark for me.
Yeah. Yeah, but we'll keep it rolling here with the CUSAs. We're starting to approach that midway point. I will be a little bit surprised if we don't end up landing on the same team here. CUSA, I landed on the Liberty Flames. Listen, like the Liberty Flames, like famously got some love from me this time last year. I had them going to the college football playoff, and it ended horribly wrong. It was very horrendous. And now you move into 2026. They did get some transfer portal guys. I have one of the better transfer portal classes in this conference. What if Jamie Chadwell can't get those guys to mesh once again, and it ends up being yet another really disappointing year. I already think that there's some hard questions that need to be had if Jamie Chadwell is even the right guy for the job, because it was a really hot year, number one, and then it steadily has gotten worse. And that really shouldn't be happening because Liberty is one of the more resource-rich programs in this conference. They should be competing for CUSA titles year in and year out. This is more on Jamie Chadwell in terms of, can he right the ship and turn this group of maybe talented individuals that you brought in from the transfer portal and turning them into a cohesive team and a cohesive unit. And it's also on that transfer portal class because it's a good number of guys that, showed potential, but they weren't super productive guys either. Mm-hmm. So can they be hits in the transfer portal is really what it barrels down to. If not, I mean, I have seen Liberty being a borderline consensus top half team in this conference. Once again, I mean, I think that there is a real world where Liberty can finish under 500 in conference play yet again. And now we have to have a really tough chance of, do we pull the trigger and find a brand new head coach? Coastal Carolina did last year, even though Coastal Carolina, by G6 standards, had a decent season, but Coastal Carolina, one of the better G6 programs, so they have high expectations there. Obviously, you would imagine it's the same thing for the Liberty Flames too.
Totally agree. I also have Liberty.
Yes, so. I figured we would match here.
well, I know why you have Liberty for personal reasons aside. Questions at quarterback. I mean, Ethan Vasco returns. He had more interceptions than touchdowns. They bring in Deshaun Purdy from Wake Forest. He looked solid in the limited game time that he got. Question at running back. A lot of unproven players there. Again, defensively, as you said, they're plugging and playing with transfer portal additions there. Let alone the schedule at JMU to open the season. You got an in-state rival who's going to be challenging for a G6 spot in the playoff, at Coastal Carolina, as we just touched on, at Delaware, who's another top team in the conference, at Kennesaw State, who's coming off a conference championship, At New Mexico State, you have to make that cross-country trip. At Missouri State, you have to make another long trip to finish out your season, let alone you also get Western Kentucky at home. So also you get Ball State at home. I know some people that watch us might get mad if I don't mention Ball State on the schedule. So yeah, I mean, it's not an easy schedule by any means. I mean, I am personally buying in the hype of Jamie Chadwell, but again, as you touched on, he's let us down before.
Yeah.
So totally would not be past the realm of possibility that he does it again. So I also have to go with Liberty here in the CUSA.
Yeah, and even though they do show up here as like a potential underachiever, I will say that I am ready to be hurt again, like by this Liberty football team. I do think that they do at least bounce back, but there is a potential there that it could go sideways and that they miss a bowl game yet again. Yep. And one last point I want to make about Liberty is that they do at least get the benefit. The team that they do miss Jacksonville State, who was very close to winning the CUSA title last year. So at least they have that working in their favor. But yeah, even then, I mean, there's some tough games that could provide some more intriguing challenges, maybe what they're anticipating. So yeah, I mean, Liberty, we got a close eye on you, but not necessarily in a positive way. But we now shift things over here to really one of the staples of college football, and that is the Mid-American Conference. I mean, what would we do on a random Tuesday in November if we didn't have MAC football on our TV? Spend time with our families or something? I think not. But
spend time with your kid, Jake? No, not at all.
No, he can talk to me when he knows ball. But anyhow, I am curious though. Like, we did match on the CUSA pick. I'm curious to see if we end up matching on this Maction pick as well. So I'm curious to hear what team you're eyeing in terms of a team that could really disappoint you this fall.
Eastern Michigan.
Eastern Michigan. Okay.
Eastern Michigan. One, I know you're a Chris Creighton stan, so that's partially not totally my pick. Why? But that's a part of it. I like Noah Kim as quarterback. I know a lot of people were giving me flack for having him in the top 10 of G6 quarterbacks that I put out. I think he's solid. I think he's above average. I'm not saying he's lighting the world on fire, but I think he's above average. So he doesn't pan out again this year. He kind of bottoms out, let alone they bring in a new defensive coordinator as well. Not a lot of returning production holistically on the team. Most of it is on the defensive side. You only return 56% of your offensive line production from last season, which is not high at all. Let alone they're one of the lowest teams in resources, let alone in the MAC, but in all of the FBS. So I think that could show its ugly head here. They don't allocate the necessary resources to be able to put out a comparable football team, let alone the schedule. Sac State's open the season. Don't know what Sac State's going to be. They're completely new. Michigan State on the road, at Wisconsin. Those are two losses out of conference. At UMass, you have to make a pretty sizable trip to Massachusetts.
Yeah, and UMass is not going to be like a winless football team either. They're going to be significantly better too.
No, they are not. At Akron, that's going to be a toss-up game. You get Ohio on the road, at Western Michigan. Also, a weird scheduling quirk. They have a bye week. They play Central, have another bye week, and then play their final two games of the season. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So, and I think the floor for this team is 5-7 potentially, but they also have the ceiling of 8-4. So definitely a toss-up for Eastern Michigan for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from with Eastern Michigan. I looked at their schedule, and I think there's a path for them to, like, I have them as a bowl team, but I mean, I have their floor as a lot lower because it's one of those teams where they can't just simply roll their headgear out and assume that they're going to win. I have a floor of 1-11. Like, it could be a disastrous year, especially if they end up having like injuries across several key positions, such as offensive line. The offensive line is a little bit of a question mark, like you mentioned. What if Noah Kim also gets hurt, and he's hurt for a long term as well? Like, just generally not a lot of depth here. And it's really the testament of Chris Creighton being able to find a way to could be at least average here at Eastern Michigan. I know his record isn't great by any means, but it's just genuinely one of the hardest places to win at. So, it's always a razor thin margin. He usually finds a way, but it doesn't always happen, though, is what I'm trying to say at the end of the day, right? So I could see where it could go horribly wrong for Eastern Michigan. I went a little different, though. I actually went the Ohio Bobcats.
Okay.
Brand new head coach, John Hauser. We saw a very incredible, valiant effort against UNLV. Really good UNLV team last year. What if it was just a rally around the flag effect? It's kind of, if you think about it, kind of the G6 version of what Ole Miss is dealing with. With Pete Golding, taking over as a head coach during the postseason. Really good postseason, made to the semifinal of the college football playoff. Kind of the same deal here. Not a college football playoff appearance per se, but John Hauser takes over amid very weird circumstances. Very, very weird stuff that we would normally not see, and is not the most family friendly, to put it lightly. But John Hauser takes over the bowl game, wins the bowl game, and now he is in charge as the full-time head coach. He got the interim tag removed from here on out. So it makes me wonder, is that a little bit of an insanity run, or is that something more long-term? Plus, he also loses Parker Navarro. He's no longer with this program as well. He also loses their top receiver and Chase Hendricks as well. Like, this is simply not the same team. And there's just a lot of losable games here. They could still be a really good football team, because I do trust Ohio holistically as an organization, even with the recent turnover that they had at head coach. But unlike in previous years, Ohio just doesn't have the same wiggle room. So if they end up getting hurt in key positions, kind of what you were talking about with Eastern Michigan, it could get pretty ugly for them very quickly too.
And they are one of the few teams that returns less than 10% of their offensive line production.
Damn.
It's crazy to even say that. So they're one of the lowest teams in all college football in offensive line production. Receiver is a huge question mark for me with Ohio. And again, sorry, there was a giant there was a motorcycle outside. Sorry. Let alone, as you touched on, Parker Navarro is a huge loss. I love watching Parker Navarro there, but he's going to be a massive loss offensively. So a lot of question marks for Ohio, this team. The floor I have for this team is, it's a lot when you have to do the keyword search.
I know, probably a lot of teams. Yeah, I have like a little bit lower myself. I have 2 and 10 personally. But I mean, it's you have a lot of teams of you have a lot of notes when you got to do keyword searches to find something quickly.
Yep. Especially when you're going through a spreadsheet and you have multiple sheets. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. That might be something for feeling really degenerate. Just look through each other's spreadsheets just to see what the notes look like.
Yep.
Just to see what the other person is thinking, and then have people comment on it. I'm sure that'll be something for those that are Excel lovers.
Dude, if someone saw my model, they might scream because of how unorganized it is and everything. So
it's fine. It's totally fine. Which another conference that is totally fine though is the Mountain West as well. Going back out west here, man, and I'm looking at the teams out west, and dude, that is so incredibly hot. What I will say, one team that I'm looking at that could be more disappointing than expected. I actually going with a little bit of a unique answer. I went with Wyoming.
Okay.
I think Wyoming is one of those teams where they had a really solid defensive season, but offensively they showed absolutely no pulse. And Jay Sovil hasn't really worked out ever since he took over as the head coach a couple of years ago after their longtime head coach, which their name is currently escaping me at the moment. He ended up retiring. And so the nightmare scenario is this. What if the offense not only continues to not show a pulse, but what if they also take a step back defensively?
Yeah.
What if that nightmare scenario absolutely does happen here because, I mean, their non-conference schedule is going to cause some problems from the get-go. I mean, Colorado State on the road, that's an improved team under Jim Mora. Central Michigan on the road, that's a cross-country road trip. That's you got to go play in Michigan. UConn, you do get UConn, which is a solid football team as well. And then you also have the pleasure of playing both North Dakota State on the road. You got to play in the Fargo Dome. You got to play UNLV on the road too. It can get dicey pretty quickly here for Wyoming. Not only if Jay Sovil doesn't take that next step forward as a head coach, but the defense gets worse. The offense continues to show absolutely no pulse, and it just becomes an absolute dumpster fire. And those people out in Wyoming, like, that is unique, as Wyoming is the only Division I school like in the state of Wyoming. So like,
Yep.
they care. They deeply care about their football team, and they will let you know about it if you done messed up.
This is true. Wyoming being the only program in the state, and they deeply care. They show out. I mean, I forget who they're playing, but Josh Allen's jersey retirement last year, I mean, they showed out for that. Like, they love him. So whenever they get a notable player of that level, I mean, the Wyoming fans show out. All respect to the Pokes fans out there. Another state in the Mountain West that only has one FBS team. We're going a little further out west, and it pains me to do this, Jake. It pains me.
Oh no.
I'm going with Timmy Chang's Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. I have that, I got to do it. Man. And aside from your Mike Alejado, stud, your Pofole Ashlock, stud. They have a new offensive coordinator. They can't be overlooked. It may be a similar system, but what's to say that they don't regress a little bit offensively because it's the new offensive coordinator? You return 65% of your offensive line production. That's okay. That's solid. The snaps come in from the portal, 94th in the country. That's not good. Schedule-wise, at Stanford, played you close last season, but you were able to sneak out a win there. Revenge on the mind to open up the season. You then return home UNLV. Massive conference game, open up the season. New Mexico State, at Wyoming, at Arizona State. You have Arizona State on the road in the middle of your conference schedule, which, I mean, that's a huge roadblock. Oh, let alone you have to come home and play New Mexico, who is another front runner in the Mountain West. Oh, and by the way, you have to make the multi-time zone cross-country trip to Northern Illinois, who is now a conference opponent. Stupid. You have to host North Dakota State, who's going to be a player in this conference. Let alone you also have to play the newcomer Sac State. We don't know how they're going to be. Nevada could be a sneaky team. You also have to go to the Sun Bowl to play UTEP. So you have multiple long-distance trips here. Wyoming, Arizona State, Northern Illinois, UTEP, Nevada. I mean, I get it's the Mountain West. They make these trips all the time, but you have to go multiple times. Like, they're away, home, bye week, road, home. Like, to be able to do that multiple times, I mean, that's part of the reasons I respect Hawaii a lot, just having a football program out there. But, I mean, all that travel, new offensive coordinator, like, the floor I have is 6-6. I mean, and a lot of people, I mean, especially in our group, are putting Hawaii as a top contender in this conference. So I think there's potential they bottom out.
Yeah, and not only do they have to make some numerous like cross-country road trips, they did also lose Jackson Harris in the portal. I mean, he was nearly 1,000-yard receiver. He goes and transfers off to LSU. I'm told that's not a good thing, like losing a 1,000-yard wide receiver in the transfer portal. Yeah, I was told this. I don't know like how true it is. I heard they don't necessarily grow on trees, but
yeah. But we also don't know ball. So
yeah, we don't know. Apparently, we don't watch the games, Reed.
Well, at least I don't. You literally do. for your program. I don't watch them though.
Well, that part is debatable depending on like who you're asking. But I will say this is as well. I mean, it's yeah. And what if Micah Awahata also gets hurt too? Like that's a dramatic drop off with the QB2.
Major drop off if Awahata gets hurt.
Yeah, like that's a straight up like you're cooked, fam. Just like because it's not even like the QB2 could be terrible. I don't think he's going to be that bad, but like Mike Awahata is just special, and going from someone who's just absolutely special and is a joy to watch, even for like the more agnostic fans who, like your average backup quarterback it's tough.
Yeah,
it's so tough.
Yeah, I mean personally, not even just quarterback, running back. I also have some questions. They returned Cam Barfield. He was okay last year, but behind him, it's a lot of unproven production. So that could be another huge question mark if Barfield gets hurt at running back for them.
Yeah, and speaking of like guys that are just absolutely like unproven or like just unproven commodities in general, like it really brings me over to the like the Pac-12 like up next here. Washington State is going to have some unproven guys like this upcoming season, especially head coach. Head coach is going to be looking like dramatically different here. They're on their third coach in the last 3 years. And the thing that I'm worried about for Washington State is whether they just absolutely get demoralized even before like the end of September. They play Washington to start the season. Apple Cup, anything could happen. But then you proceed to go and play Kansas State on the road. Colin Klein's going to have himself a pretty nice football team out there. You do get a home game. Congratulations, but that home game, it's Noah Fafita. Have fun with that one, big dog.
You just see Noah Fafita peek behind the door.
Yeah, like that's just a great little break from like the first 2 games of the season, and then you get into Pac-12 conference play. You have the second toughest schedule in the entire G6. That's awesome. Love to see that for Washington State. You got Boise State, who made the college football playoff 2 years ago, and even in a down year still led to them winning the Mountain West last year. That's a down season for the Boise State Broncos, and you got to play those guys. Yep. San Diego State also almost made the like the Mountain West title game. You play them on the road. You play Texas State on the road towards the end of the season too. Like, have fun dealing with that passing attack, buddy. I'm not a huge believer of this defense either. There's just a lot of new pieces here that are going to have to come together quickly.
Yeah.
And if they get demoralized before the end of September, like it's not going to get that much easier for them when they get into conference play. So it could be a messy first season for this new regime.
I'm going to go in a different direction, but with another team that is going with the new regime, and it's actually one of the OGs, Jake, the other OG of the conference.
The other OG?
The other OG. I'm going with Oregon State. Okay. And similar situation to Washington State. Enter a new era. Jamarcus Shepard comes over from Alabama. This is his first head coaching job. So, I mean, they could come out slow out of the gate. They return Malik Murphy, a quarterback, not Malik Washington. But they also bring in Braden Atkinson, who was really good for Mercer last year. 34 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, over 3,600 yards. So quarterback is a question. Don't know who's going to start there. Running back, I have a ton of questions. They return Cornell Hatcher, but behind him, it's a lot of question marks. So if he gets hurt, receiver looks to be okay. They also have 2 new coordinators, as we've talked about with teams already on the program. Bringing in a new head coach, also new coordinators. Schedule, you open up at Houston. That's not going to be easy. You then return home. Oh, just playing a small commodity known as Texas Tech.
Which, who knows what to expect from Texas Tech at this point? If they
who knows what to expect, but that defense has not changed. So I paused for a dramatic effect there. Then you also return home in week 3 to play a little-known team out of the FCS called Montana. They're not going to be a pushover, even though you might be a double-digit favorite against an FCS opponent, but they will put up a fight, I can guarantee you that. At Colorado State, I mean, we've talked about Jim Mora literally on the last show. Colorado State could surprise some people. your sleeper pick. You do get the benefit of San Diego State at home, Washington State at home, so that's good. You have to play Boise State on the road. That's gonna be tough. You have to play Fresno State on the road. That's also gonna be tough. So I think floor for this team is 3-9 potentially, depending how that flex game works out the last game of the season. So, yeah, Oregon State. I think I got to see it to believe it with Jamarcus Shepard.
Yeah, which I will say this, like tentatively speaking, the flex game is currently showing to be Washington State on the road. Like, and I know that Washington State is on this graphic as well, but man, like in their home games, like they pull up in Pullman, Washington. They love their football team out there in the countryside, out there in the Pacific Northwest for sure. So,
Old Crimson.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not a team that has very high expectations for them anyways. I mean, I didn't have them going to a bowl game anyways, but also at the same time, like there's a worst case scenario where they literally do not improve from last year. Even though I think their special teams is going to be a little bit better, which is not hard to do because they were historically awful. That's how they lost the Sam Houston game. I know because I stayed up in the middle of the night to tend to my son, and that game happened to be on. I believe it was on the CW.
It was. Shout out Sam Houston.
It screams the CW type game.
It did. When you also start the season 0-7, and your first win didn't come until week 8, and you played Lafayette.
Hey man, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Shout out Lafayette. Yeah.
Oh man, but we're gonna get ourselves out of here in the Pacific Northwest. Though we're gonna head out to the southeastern part of the country. We got the SEC, and then we got ourselves some Sun Belt. So Reed, my brother in arms here, as we get to the southeastern part of the country, like which one of these SEC teams that you're looking at that you're like, oh man, this could get a little dicey, like pretty quickly, like out here in the southeast.
Ole Miss. Ole Miss. You like that zero hesitation? I was locked and loaded for that one.
Yeah, that was probably locked in and loaded for. That was probably one of the easiest ones for you.
That was one of the first names I wrote down. Yeah, or I highlighted them. Yeah. So this is a weird case study solely because they do return Trinidad Chambliss. He's arguably the best quarterback in the sport. They returned Kwan Lacey. He's arguably the best running back in college football. They returned good production on both sides of the ball. They made good portal additions and were able to retain players, namely from leaving the program. You return a Suntarine Perkins on defense. You add a Keaton Thomas, a Luke Farrelly, who arguably should be in another school, but that's a different story. You return a Deuce Alexander at receiver. You return Jonte Cook. Or you add him from Syracuse. But Lane Kiffin's not there anymore. Let's not forget. Lane Kiffin is not there anymore. And a lot of people are buying the Pete Golding hype. Their team bought the Pete Golding hype, made a run to the semifinal last year. So I personally have to see a full season of Pete Golding to be able to fully back his head coaching ability. And that's solely why I am picking Ole Miss. They could fall right back down to where they were before they got Lane Kiffin. And their floor I have at 7-5. So the schedule's not easy. Obviously, they play an SEC schedule. You open up with Louisville in Nashville. That's not going to be an easy game. You have game of the season potential against LSU. We all know the reasons for that. On the road at the Swamp. After that, coming off a massive high of that game, that could be a trap game. At Vanderbilt, as we've talked previously, could be a sleeper in the conference. At Texas, you get Georgia at home. At Oklahoma, you get Mizzou at home, who I think is going to be a sneaky team in this conference as well. So 7-5, I think, is completely capable for this team next year. It definitely is on the cards.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to see as well if we do end up seeing a absolute, if it was just a Linsanity run that we saw from Ole Miss, or if it was something long term. Because even Pete Golding has mentioned this himself. He doesn't even want to be a head coach. He was just kind of, it was one of those situations where the cover was laid bare after Lane Kiffin's surprise departure from Oxford and going over to LSU. The Ole Miss admin looked around, was like, "You're going to be our guy. Please don't mess this one up for us." And he's like, "Okay, I guess we'll do what we got to do." And he did a good job with it. So, like, I don't even know how invested he's going to be as a head coach, because he doesn't want to be a head coach in the first place. Like, he's more than content with just being a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, but I mean, like, and what if also Trinidad Chambers gets hurt, as well as Keelan Lacey gets hurt too? Like, those are two superstars. You know, like, this team is not going to be as deep as what they were last year. Like, it's not like they found another Trinidad Chambliss out of the transfer portal and they have a backup quarterback that's going to magically turn into a borderline Heisman Trophy candidate. Like, that's a 1 in 100 scenario.
Yeah.
You know, because they chased Austin Simmons out the door. But yeah, I went a different direction though. I went Tennessee. I went Tennessee Volunteers here. This really turns into some additional concerns that I have with them right now, like the quarterback position. It's a very QB friendly offense.
Yes.
Right. With what Josh Heupel typically runs. For me, you're looking at one or two options. You can either have George McIntyre, who's been in the system for a couple of years, but he's hardly played. Or door number two has Brandon Faison, five-star recruit. But this time last month, we were talking about high school prom with him. Okay. And so those are your two options. One who's
just a baby. He's just a baby.
Like, one who's technically experienced, but not in a meaningful way. And one is literally has never played it down in college football. And then you got to factor in the pass rush as well. You were hoping that Chaz Coleman was going to play for your team and be a meaningful starter and being a meaningful contributor. He's not here anymore. He got dismissed because of some issues that he was having off the field. He didn't even bother to show up to spring workouts. So the guy that was going to raise the ceiling and arguably raise the floor of your pass rush, well, he's not here anymore either. So you have maybe more additional concerns than maybe what you had this time a few months ago. And it's a brutal time in the SEC, especially when you have that 9th conference game now. And even while your non-conference games, you go on the road to play against Georgia Tech. You know, Georgia Tech might not be the same team as last year, but I mean, Georgia Tech's not going to lie down without a fight. Georgia Tech is going to give Tennessee a 4-quarter game. Like, that is part of Brent Key's identity. On top of that, you got Texas, who's being hyped up as a potential SEC champion. Auburn's going to be improved. Arkansas is going to be improved. Alabama is going to be in that top rung once again. That South Carolina trip, that's an underrated venue. Good luck with that. Texas A&M, you play in Kyle Field, arguably one of the loudest stadiums in college football. Good luck with that. Vanderbilt on the road. Vanderbilt has improved their profile as a program holistically. So that's not an automatic layup, even though Vanderbilt's not going to be the same team. Like, it could go sideways. And what if it does? What if they get off to a slow start? We already know there's some Tennessee fans that are not too terribly happy about Josh Heupel. Those boo birds could get real loud, and it could get real toxic in Neyland Stadium if they get off to a slow start. And maybe you get to that Auburn game, they're 2-2, and get off to a slow start once again. Do we start hearing that fire Heupel chant start going? Like, it could turn to a toxic situation very quickly, especially if they get off to a relatively slow start.
Hey, I put Heupel on the warm seat for a reason, Jake. You know, and legit, they could be 2-2 going into that Auburn game, and exactly for the point you said, they come out sluggish. You know, they're down at halftime. I mean, we could see a similar situation to what Franklin had to deal with at Penn State last year. You were losing to Northwestern at home at halftime. They're booing you off the field at halftime. Like, we could literally see that same exact situation here, because the fan base is about to reach a boiling point that they're just not putting up with Josh Heupel anymore. So I see your reasoning there. The Tennessee could potentially bottom out. I mean, again, it's a SEC schedule, so you know anything is possible.
Yeah, and anything is definitely possible in the words of Kevin Garnett. But as we go ahead and approach here on this final conference here of the of the night. We got the Sun Belt. It's been fun talking ball as always. I'm glad that we can focus on this instead of like some other things that are happening in our sport right now. But yeah, this Sun Belt Conference, man, I'm very curious to see what direction you ended up going for, just in terms of what we have for the Sun Belt. Who's that possible underachiever in your eyes?
So there's a couple different directions here. No, I'm going JMU, bro. I'm going JMU. Had to do it. I had to do it.
I mean, I'm sure it has something to do with the sky high expectations that they have, even with a brand new coach.
Yeah, it's totally not with the fact that a lot of people think they can make it back to the playoff and they lose a lot of their high-end production of last season, and they bring in Billy Napier, who's coming off an absolute dumpster fire at Florida, but has some success back in the Sun Belt, where he has previous success. They return hardly any production on the offensive line. You lose Alonzo Barnett. You lose Wayne Knight. Quarterback is a question for me. Depth at running back is a question mark. You have some holes to fill in the defensive front. 2 new coordinators, again, as we've prefaced with new coaches. Schedule is not easy by any means. Again, you have Liberty to open up the season. Week 3, sneaky road trip cross country at San Diego State. That is going to be one I have an eye out on. At ODU, again, we've talked about ODU for a brief moment here tonight. Marshall is not going to be a pushover in the Sun Belt. At Georgia Southern, not going to be a pushover in the Sun Belt. At App State, don't know what could happen in the mountains there in October. UConn, a sneaky out-of-conference game late in the season in November. You have to make the northern trip to Connecticut. You get Coastal Carolina at home. Don't know what Coastal Carolina is going to be with new head coach Ryan Beard. Shout out. So JMU, I mean, I think they could bottom out at 6-6, still be a bowl team, but I think it might be some growing pains for Billy Napier potentially. So my pick is JMU.
Yeah, and also like with Billy Napier, we haven't really seen him succeed like too deep into the NIL era either. We saw it early on in the NIL era, like still having him have some success at Troy, but then when he got to Florida, like it definitely did not work out at all at Florida. So he's here at James Madison. He's gonna have the resources to be really successful early and often. But can he recapture that Sun Belt Billy magic that helped get him the Florida head coaching job in the first place with a brand new roster? Because a lot of the key players that were on this James Madison roster left for other schools, for other power conference jobs, and I thought they did a good job in the transfer portal to replace a lot of that talent that they lost, but you got to turn that into a cohesive team. So that's going to be something to really keep an eye on. I did go into a different division, though, when it comes to the Sun Belt. I actually went over to the West Division for this one. Maybe a little bit of a team that's not getting a ton of talk. Louisiana Tech. I think Louisiana Tech, I think they could have a solid year, but Louisiana Tech could also get a potentially rude awakening as well. This is not the CUSA anymore, buddy. This is not going to be one of those because Louisiana Tech underachieved last year, especially with how they performed in non-conference play. When they played a 4-quarter game against LSU, thought it was going to be a little bit more off to the races with Louisiana Tech, and then they kind of fizzled out in CUSA play. Finished strong. They did finish strong, but the Sun Belt is tougher. And not only is Sun Belt just generally a better conference than the CUSA, Louisiana Tech is going to have the toughest schedule in this conference. They start things out at LSU once again. They play Baylor as well on the road too. Army is certainly not going to be a slouch by any means. But then you also get the pleasure of playing Old Dominion. That's an elevated program under Ricky Ron. You have the pleasure of playing Troy on the road. Well, they just so happen to be your defending West Division champs that nearly won the Sun Belt last year, gave James Madison a 4-quarter game, and you have Georgia Southern to finish this year out as well. Like Clay Howden's got a sneaky good football team too. Not to mention, you also have the Raging Cajuns that are going to have some continuity with Lunch Winfield. So Louisiana Tech, I mean, they're going to be a little bit out of their element here in their first year in the Sun Belt. They're going to have to bring it if they're going to come back as a bowl team. because, man, like if they don't show up consistently, I mean, they could absolutely be a bottom feeder team in the Sun Belt this year. I have the floor for them at 2-10 personally. It could get rough.
I almost went with Louisiana Tech solely because of that point you made at the top. You know, they are entering a new conference, so it could be a transition period. They could have to get used to playing that level of a schedule. So, and it's going to be a step up. It's going to be a step up in competition level for sure. So, I mean, new boys on the block. Let's see how they do.
Yeah, so that is yeah, they're definitely new boys on the block. I'm excited for Louisiana Tech though. I will say that about them. I think this is a better fit for them than when they were in the like the CUSA. I like the natural rivalries that they are going to have with Louisiana and Louisiana Monroe too. You know, and we did it. We got a ULM mention in there. That was not why I did that for the record. But I mean, it's just more regional rivalries, and that's what makes college football special. Is those regional rivalries, and Louisiana Tech gets more of that. So I'm excited for it as their fan base, even though it could be a more difficult year because they are dealing with overall better competition. But I am always curious to hear your guys' thoughts, not only in the live chat, but in the comment section as well. Like, what are some teams that maybe you're eyeing that maybe is getting a lot of hype, whether it be from us or from other people, but feel could have genuinely disappointing seasons? Definitely let us know in the live chat or in the comment section if you're watching this after the fact. Reed, it's been an incredibly fun time. I'm glad we got to talk some ball that does not pertain to what's happening in the great state of Texas right now. Any final thoughts here before we sign off tonight, my man?
Want to preface that we are also on Buzzer. If you've not checked out Buzzer yet, make sure to go check out their program. No AI swap. A lot of good content creators over there, mainly in college football. College football is starting to blow up over there specifically. So get on it before you get left behind. Definitely go check out Buzzer and appreciate the opportunity of letting us be on the platform once again.
Yeah, and absolutely. And speaking of our friends over at Buzzer, we do have a tour name. That tour name is going to be picked out. Is going to be displayed at a later time. Hopefully, we get that delved. Hopefully, in July, we're making that reveal, and hopefully, it comes with some extra firepower in terms of a really good partnership. So we'll have to wait and see what that entails, but definitely some exciting things in the future for you guys. But for now, we are going to sign off. Hopefully you guys are all out there having a great night, joined by my right-hand man himself, Reed Napper. And for now, hopefully you guys are all out there having a good one.